Well, this is a tricky question because there's obviously a sense in which alienation reinforces alienation. There is certainly a vicious circle of reinforcement around alienation. That is to say that if you're built so as to be a kind of alienated from external reality, including the social world, the material world, the embodied world, and so forth, which is an extremely prevalent feature of INFJ life, the temptation would be to retreat, right? A psychoanalyst would call it narcissistic retreat. Narcissistic, not in the sense of narcissistic personality disorder or anything like that, but self-directed retreat. Go back into my own world. I socially isolate to some extent in terms of my physical surroundings, but perhaps most importantly, I sort of find refuge in my own mind, in my own NI world, in the face of the disappointments that seem to accrue to social interactions in the material world. And here the vicious circle will be something like, my alienation has an existential structure to it, but of course it has manifestations in behavior, right? I'm going to come across a little bit different, a little bit strange. That in itself is going to make it more likely that I'll experience something like being rejected or misread or misunderstood. And this will make me want to retreat, thereby going back into alienation and making my alienation even more pronounced. But if my alienation becomes more pronounced, that will make it even harder for me to go back into the external world without fear of the consequence of further rejection, further being misread, further misunderstanding. So you don't want to be caught in this particular vicious circle, right? But at the same time, we don't want to say that the NI world is a place that you should never inhabit as an INFJ. I mean, that would be crazy. INFJ people, like INTJ people, have NI dominance, meaning that NI is the function that gives them a world, a conscious world, but mostly an unconscious world. And it's where a large part of their individuation, the consolidation of the personality takes place. Remember, there's two sides to NI. There's NI expansion, aggregation of new contents via SC gathering to provide more processing material for NI, expanding it thereby. That's NI expansion, linked to world experience. And then there's NI consolidation. That is to say, spending time within your NI to work on these newly aggregated material, to holistically make them cohere and blend with what's already in the NI holistic frame, to maintain the holism through expansion, right? There cannot be real expansion without consolidation. If there is no consolidation, the expansion will just fizzle out. You know, the contents will try to come in and then they'll just be expelled because they haven't been consolidated. They haven't stuck, you know. But at the same time, consolidation by itself leads to a certain atrophy of your NI world. You will end up just repeating the same things, becoming a broken record, not even realizing that. You know, that was part of my point, saying NITI looping is never good, because NITI looping is a straight road to pure consolidation, no expansion, and therefore mental atrophy, and a certain inability to even notice the atrophy, particularly as the NITI looping continues unhindered. So you want expansion and consolidation. It seems clear that expansion is about getting outside your NI world to SE gather and FE interact and so on and so forth. Consolidation is about moving inside your NI world to regulate through NI and clean up, condense, parse, analyze, get rid of the fat through TI. So clearly, you need both. And alienation tends towards consolidation. Let's put it that way, right? So in a sense, one of the existential challenges for the INFJ personality is to not atrophy, because atrophy is the path of least resistance. you need to do yourself a little violence to remain engaged in external reality, because consolidation is atrophy. It's more comfortable, gives you a sense that you're secure, but you won't be enriched as a person, you won't enhance yourself, you certainly won't individuate, you'll remain a little bit of a child. Let's just say it straight. So if you're stuck in a cycle of alienation and alienation, of course, then it becomes harder and harder to expand because you've become socially inept in many ways. That's why in The Infinite Soul, which is my latest book on the INFJ, which you can get at the first link below, by the way, guys, on INFJ life in the modern world, how INFJs can find meaning, purpose, value, and a sense of direction in a world they often see as hostile. I talk about islands of spirit. The concept of islands of spirit is really about having communities, ideally in the real world, but it can also work online, where you interact with people on a non-instrumental footing, where you can really engage with each other as ends in yourselves and your friends as ends in themselves, almost in a Kantian sense, and where you can explore questions of being, questions that are important to you, and you don't have to worry about how you fit within a larger, sort of web of society. It's likely to be with other anti-dominants, but it can also be with people of other types who are interested in these islands of spirit, recovering the spirituality and the sense of the infinite soul through these little oases. And these oases, in fact, you should read the book because I go further into this, will also be where you can find support if you find yourself stuck in a cycle of alienation. Because what will get you outside of the alienation is not SE, because SE by then will have been submerged by NI, who just completely cancels it out through this excessive and self-destructive consolidation in a way. You'll find it through FE engagement. FE engagement has become scary with most of the world, but not with these islands of spirit, which is why it's really important that you think about building and joining these islands if you're an anti-dominant. Very happy to talk more about islands of spirit. If you're interested, let me know in the comments. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video, guys. Don't forget my other book on the INFJ, the Ecstatic Soul, first book in the Soul series. A new look at the INFJ personality is also linked below if you're interested. Get the book if you want the deepest investigation of the INFJ mind, INFJ consciousness. Okay, guys? And as usual, I cannot do it without you. I very much depend on your kind support via Patreon, so please consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is below. These times are not easy, and it's, I mean that, so I would really, really appreciate your support. For a small amount, you get access to great perks, like access to our Discord server and bonus videos every 2-3 weeks on a topic of your choosing. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.